Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. Poland activates NATO Article 4 to consult allies after Russian drone attack. The world reacts to the Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. And Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency reach an agreement to resume nuclear inspections. First, Poland has activated Article 4 of the NATO treaty, requesting formal consultations with allies after the latest airspace violations. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk said the situation has fundamentally changed, calling it the gravest security threat to Poland since World War II. He stressed Poland is not on the brink of war, but described the provocations as far more dangerous than before.
This situation brings us the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II. We have a full-scale war beyond our Ukrainian-Russian border, but we already have something that goes beyond the bounds of mere provocations in our own skies. And perhaps today we need to say it again, very loudly and clearly. Poland today has a political enemy who does not conceal his hostile intentions beyond its eastern border.
Poland and NATO air defences shot down 19 Russian drone attacks that entered its airspace on Wednesday morning. In response to the unprecedented violation, President Karol Nawrocki has called a National Security Council meeting.
Poland's airspace was violated overnight by 19 Russian drones, prompting Polish and NATO jets to scramble. 3 or 4 of the drones were shot down, with the last interception reported at 6:45 local time. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said a significant number of the drones entered from Belarus. He emphasized that only drones posing a direct threat were shot down and that operations were conducted safely.
This is the first time Russian drones have been shot down over the territory of a NATO country. Therefore, all our allies are taking the situation very seriously. We have not recorded any casualties. We are ready to repel such provocations and attacks. We are well prepared and the situation is serious.
Residents in 3 eastern regions were told to stay at home. Chopin Airport in Warsaw briefly closed, while Lublin Airport remains closed. Belarus said some drones went off course due to electronic warfare and warned Poland and Lithuania. Earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said at least 8 Shahed drones were aimed toward Poland, calling it a dangerous precedent for Europe and urging a joint response from Ukraine, Poland and European partners. NATO confirmed that it is consulting closely with Warsaw but did not classify the incident as an attack on a member state.
With the cash balances, Putin's message is clear. And our response must be clear too. We need more pressure on Russia to come to the negotiation table. We need more sanctions. We are now working on the 19th package in coordination with partners. We're particularly looking at phasing out Russian fossil fuels faster. We're looking at the shadow fleet and at third countries.
Authorities say the situation is under control, but Poland's National Security Council to determine next steps and coordinate with allies.
Defence officials from the European Group of 5 and Ukraine gathered in London on Wednesday. The UK's Defence Minister John Healey welcomed counterparts from Italy, Germany, France and Poland at the Royal Artillery Barracks. The meeting comes just hours after Poland shot down Russian drones that crossed into its airspace during strikes on western Ukraine, the first time a NATO member has directly engaged in the war. Shifting to the Middle East now, where world leaders have condemned Israel's airstrike in Doha after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed he had ordered what he called a surgical precision strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. The attack has sparked global alarm with calls for restraint and fears of regional escalation.
Smoke rising above Doha's skyline. Verified video shows the aftermath of an Israeli strike on Tuesday afternoon. Israel says 15 fighter jets carried out the raid, firing 10 munitions at a single site said to house Hamas's top negotiators.
At noon today, I convened the heads of Israel's security organizations and authorized a surgical precision strike on the terrorist chiefs of Hamas. These are the same terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
Hamas says its leaders survived but confirmed 6 deaths, including Humam al-Hayya, son of exiled Gaza chief Halil al-Hayya and senior aide Jihad Labad. A Qatari security officer was also killed.
The leadership of the movement survived this cowardly attempt, but a group of martyrs ascended, including brother Jihad Labad and Humam al-Hayya.
Qatar's Prime Minister denounced the strike, but vowed Doha's role as mediator will continue.
The attack was a 100% treacherous act. Mediation in Qatari diplomacy is part of its identity, and nothing will deter us from persisting in this role.
Condemnation has poured in. France's Emmanuel Macron called the strikes unacceptable, whatever the reason. Britain's Keir Starmer said they violated Qatar's sovereignty and risked further escalation. Spain, Canada and Ireland voiced similar concerns, while the UN Secretary-General urged a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it. In Washington, President Donald Trump said he was very unhappy with the strike, though he maintained eliminating Hamas remains a worthy goal. The White House later confirmed he had directed envoy Steve Witkoff to warn Qatar, though too late to stop the attack.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
A short time later, the White House sought to clarify Washington's position, stressing support for Qatar while acknowledging Israel's objectives.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals, and feels very badly about the location of this attack.
Qatar has hosted Hamas's political bureau since 2012 and has been central to ceasefire negotiations. Sources say the targeted officials were reviewing a US-backed truce proposal when the strike hit. That plan would see remaining hostages freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and talks on a permanent ceasefire. Regional diplomats say discussions on the US-backed truce proposal are still scheduled to resume later this week.
Focusing on Asia now, protests in Nepal escalated on Monday following the resignation of former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. The unrest started after the government tried to ban social media platforms nationwide. Demonstrators set fire to government buildings, vehicles and officials' homes, including those of former Prime Minister Oli. The Parliament building and the historic Singha Darbar Palace was also damaged. At least 20 people have died and more than 350 injured during 2 days of unrest. Army Chief General urged calm and dialogue while the military has taken control nationwide, deployed troops to the streets and closed all airports. President Ramchandra Paudel is preparing to form a new government. France has a new Prime Minister after President Macron appointed Sébastien Lecornu, a new trusted ally, to navigate a deepening political and economic crisis. Lecornu takes office in the middle of a growing public debt, sharp political divides and public unrest. Here's more.
French President Emmanuel Macron has appointed Sébastien Lecornu as the new Prime Minister, one day after a parliamentary vote of no confidence ousted François Bayrou and his cabinet. 39-year-old Lecornu is a long-time ally of Macron and has served as France's defence minister for more than 3 years. Lecornu was among the favourites for the role and is known for his loyalty and experience. He rallied behind Macron during the 2017 presidential campaign and has played a key role in shaping France's military response to Russia's war in Ukraine. The Élysée Palace announced that Lecornu's first mission will be to consult political parties and build agreements needed for upcoming decisions, starting with France's 2026 budget. That budget will be his top priority as the country faces a growing debt crisis. The outgoing Prime Minister, François Bayrou, had pushed for budget cuts, but the National Assembly rejected his plan, leading to his resignation on Tuesday. Reactions to Lecornu's nomination were mixed. Centrists like Marc Fesneau welcomed the move and called for broad cooperation. The left-wing France Unbowed party condemned it and plans a no-confidence motion, though it's unlikely to pass. Meanwhile, the far-right National Rally showed tentative support, raising concerns that Macron may now depend on their backing in Parliament. Parisians reacted with a mix of resignation and concern. Many saw the choice as one of continuity rather than change.
Macron, il fait plutôt un bon choix. Parce que mine de rien...
Macron is making a pretty good choice because, casually, he's appointing someone who has the image of, I don't know, I'm in favour of safeguarding the country, of national unity. He's the Minister of the Armed Forces. He's not just any minister, he's a minister who builds consensus, who has a bit of this supreme interest of the nation.
Et on a besoin, je pense, dans ce moment d'avoir la situation du pays.
The country's situation is catastrophic. It is completely blocked. So frankly, the future is quite dark.
Non, je pense que l'avenir est assez noir.
I have the impression that every Prime Minister who tries to do something truly concrete leaves. So I tell myself it's better for him to do nothing and wait patiently in his seat, even if it means not doing too much and not making too many promises, and at least to finish their term and finish with the President, so that we don't change every 14 seconds.
Until 2027, I have no hope. And even for 2027, I don't have much hope either, to be honest. I think it's going to take a little while before France really changes. But the fact that things won't change anymore, we don't really have hope, in fact.
Le Cornu now faces the difficult task of leading a minority government through economic uncertainty and political division, with little room for error.
France is now facing a fresh wave of unrest. Also, police have clashed with demonstrators as new grassroots movement called Block Everything spreads across the country. It comes just days after Prime Minister François Bayrou was expelled in a confidence vote due to the mounting anger over austerity and the current government.
At roundabouts, on highways and outside high schools, protesters blocked traffic and faced down riot police in cities across France. In Paris, tear gas was fired at youth demonstrators outside a lycée, while on the capital's ring road, groups tried to slow traffic. Police say at least 83 people have already been detained nationwide, 75 of them in Paris. The mobilisation began online under the slogan "Block Everything," quickly spreading on social media. Initially linked to right-wing groups, analysts say the movement has since been taken over by left and far-left activists, fueling comparisons with the 2018 Yellow Vest protests. The government is taking no chances. Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau says 80,000 police have been deployed nationwide, including 6,000 in Paris, amid warnings that up to 100,000 people could join in, targeting airports, train stations and highways.
I'm here because this illegitimate government must be blocked. We don't want a war market. We don't want austerity. We want money for public services. We want money for schools, for hospitals.
Union leaders argue the protests reflect frustration with Macron's economic reforms and rising defence spending. For many, the appointment of Sébastien Lecornu as France's fifth Prime Minister in less than 2 years has only deepened the anger.
It's the same. It's Macron who's the problem, not the ministers. He has to go. He has to think about it seriously.
Demonstrations have been reported in Marseille, Lyon, Montpellier and Nantes, with roadblocks, cable fires and overturned bins disrupting traffic. Vinci, the highway operator, confirmed widespread delays across southern and western France. The protests come against the backdrop of political turmoil. Just 2 days ago, Bayrou's government fell in parliament over a budget plan to cut 44 billion euros from public spending. Macron has now tasked Lecornu with forming a new administration, while opposition parties prepare no-confidence motions. The scale of disruption remains uncertain. Police report arrests are mounting, blockades are spreading, and security forces remain on alert as the Block Everything protests continue across France.
Now, we're going to take a quick look at a subject that has been concerning the world all over. Israel is facing growing condemnation after it attacked Hamas leadership in the capital of Qatar, a US ally and key mediator in Gaza ceasefire talks said, putting hostage negotiations at risk. Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Melih Demirtas, former Turkish diplomat and researcher at Cappadocia University, who has written extensively on Israel's regional strategies and operations in the Middle East. Hello.
Thank you. Hello, and thanks for having me.
No problem. My first question is, US President Donald Trump has said that he learned of the attack and told the Qataris, but there was very little he could do in order to stop that. What does this now mean for the US relations with Qatar?
Yes, this United States position after Mr. Trump, after President Trump's style of diplomacy, is maybe is not surprising us because Mr. Trump's making such moves. One day it is like a positive declaration, and the other day he just said that I do not know anything about it. So maybe the State Department or the Foreign Ministry or the maybe much more experienced diplomats, they are a bit tired to write and to maybe declare some another things other than maybe Mr. Trump's saying. But still, Qatari and American relations are important. Yes, we know that. Because in this important chaotic atmosphere of the Middle East, we know that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, I think these lands are so much trusted. Think about Mr. Trump's first visit, please. He didn't fly to United Kingdom. But in his second term, the first stops were these states. First of all, Saudi Arabia and Arab Emirates and Qatar. I think this giving some signals about what will be the next step of United States. I think they will give much more pressure to the Israeli government. At least we hope so. Because Israeli government, I think under Mr. Netanyahu and his far-rightist, but really far-rightist elements of his government, they're really finding as maybe a sui generis. They really feeling that they are like a sui generis country, sui generis community, of course, religious ideology and everything about Zionism. And they are really pushing the limits of this sui generis position. One day they are making attacks to 4 or 5 countries and to other maybe freedom flotilla. Also, do not forget to civilian people. In every day, they are really continuing to make this moves very rapidly, and they're really making this like a very positive atmosphere. They are declaring we have this right because we are very sui generis country, they are saying.
What do you think Israel has achieved through this strike?
At least they are really showing that they have important intelligence. We know that. After 1960s, 70s, we know that this Mossad is the real maybe important force. Maybe they are really motivating many intelligence services, even MI6, CIA, I don't know, the other maybe regional countries. But then the big question arises here. How they cannot find such, in a very small territory, this hostage. Now there are only like 20, I don't know the exact number, but very small number now alive. Unfortunately, due to the attacks of Israel, maybe the other remaining hostages maybe will be really heavily wounded, or maybe unfortunately that. But this intelligence can really achieve something. Mossad in Iran, in Lebanon, in now Qatar. Yes, we know they are strong, of course. They really want to have a survival reason in this very difficult geography. But then what about the civilian populations? What about the genocidal attacks to Palestine, to other maybe Lebanese, Yemen, or even Iran? What about the civilian casualties? So yes, this Qatari operation, this Qatari attack cannot be accepted, but it really shows that Israel really again found this legitimate atmosphere to show that it's really having an intelligence even inside the countries. And we are really fearing, and we are really having some, suspicions about the communities there. They are really collaborating with the Israeli forces, and it is not good for these national securities of countries, even for the Qatari, Saudi Arabia, also Syria and Iran.
How close do you think we were to seeing a ceasefire in Gaza before these strikes happened in Doha?
We really hope that this civilian populations, at least it's really maybe above 60,000 people. And how can we now talk about a real peace? How can we really talk about the real ceasefire, durable peace after all these deaths and after all this civilian loss? But still, of course, in the name of diplomacy, in the name of international law, we really feel we really must have some hopes about ceasefires. We know that. Your first news about in your valuable sections about these Russian attacks, very newly attempted to Polish territory, it is also very frightening, very shocking. But now this is shocking. Another, of course, for 2 years, attempts on attacks are continuing due to this Israeli violations of international law. And many attempts have already done, many attempts since the beginning, especially 2025, have been done thanks to, of course, mediators, thanks to, first of all, Qatar, even Mr. Trump, even the other actors really pushing this Israeli government to have a durable ceasefire. But unfortunately, the first aggressive and demolishing act always comes from this Israeli heavy attacks, Israeli drones, and Israeli intelligence. And we do not accept that. Also, United Nations always declaring these reports that this is really the final, maybe this final blow to this international atmosphere and the international order.
Israel has said that this was solely their responsibility. However, they failed to eliminate the senior Hamas officials. Could there be another strike, do you think?
The strikes have been done actually for this, especially this last 1 year. The first year, I mean, it's always done in this Palestinian territory and heavy casualties, civilian populations. And now, in this last 1 year, we really see that outside the borders of Palestine, outside the borders of Israel, of course, there are also very heavy attacks. Start maybe with this southern Syria. Actually, it started with Lebanon. And then in Yemen, please do not forget, I always connect the situation also with this Iranian case, although this nuclear power plants, nuclear energy and everything is shown by Israeli government as the terror. But now think about Mr. Arakchi's and European Union members. I mean, they can really have a diplomacy when they are free from this violence. But still, the attacks and this, real quote-unquote terror operations of Israel can really continue in other maybe states and countries, and really are having some fears about what will be the limits, what will be the force who can really stop about this Israeli violence. And the only force, maybe the only legitimate maybe understanding always comes from United States side. So I really invite, and all this maybe diplomatic and research circles always invite our friends from the United States to push more. I mean, to Israeli government, Israeli researchers, even the think tanks, because they're really losing the ground. I mean, Israel really losing the ground in every sense, from the European, from the Asian, of course, the other continents. They are really losing all the ground. They are really succeeded to have some grounds in these last 60, 70 years, but really losing it just in this last 2 years.
Qatar has also said that it reserves the right to respond. How serious is Qatari reaction likely to be?
We really hope that this country can have, of course, some forces, compared to Israeli intelligence, and after this really last 60, 70 years of war experience, I mean, conflict experience of Israel. Unfortunately, we cannot talk about any such force from the Qatari side, but still, it is a developing community, it's a developing economy. First of all, these countries are economy or commerce countries. I mean, the new maybe hubs of commerce, the new hubs, I always call this like the new Singapore, I mean, the new East Asian tigers now arising in this region, I mean, the Middle East with Arab Emirates, with, of course, Qatar, Saudi Arabia now. Now, these countries are really pushing themselves to be really hubs and connecting forces in this commercial relations. But about this military or security forces, we do not know how can they respond. Because these people, I mean, who are living there, I mean, we have all friends, some scholars, some research, diplomatic friends, they are really having also some hesitations when they are hearing these shocking voices, I mean, yesterday with these Israeli attacks. Because these communities are not also very ready. I mean, they are not so ready to have such conflicts in their atmosphere, in their territory. So we also must, I think, support, as United States, as maybe Turkey, maybe other countries really must support such countries against these violations of Israel.
Hamas has claimed the US proposal was under consideration was a deception aimed at bringing Hamas members to a meeting in order to attack them. What do you think of that statement?
These conspiracy theories, these gossips, of course, these have some strong maybe background with every attempt of Israel in any other country. Think about these Lebanese attacks with some, technological equipment which are exploded in the pockets of some officials of there. Hamas or Hezbollah, but still, or also Iran. Even in Syria, we do not know these critical situations still in southern Syria. Maybe some news are always changing about the community situation and the changing regime in Syria is also so tense and sensitive there. But still, yes, they have some background to believe such theories. Even they are conspiracy. Because the leaders are really, in Iran, for example, they lost, there are many important officials, which are really coming with the sake of diplomacy. And now, some of them really thinking that, yes, they are summoned, they are maybe called for such diplomacy reasons, and in 1 minute, in one night, everything's changed. So it really created an atmosphere which is so undiplomatic, which is so real inhumane, and also Mr. Antonio Guterres said it really takes the order. And this is the last thing that we want. Please do not forget that in our northern section, as this Russian, Ukrainian, and Polish territory, another very tensive and sensitive atmosphere is still happening. And suddenly it can also have some effect, the same effect can be in one day, in one night, in Asian territory. It is always so sensitive there. So one event can really stimulate or motivate some other actors who are really struggling to have some order, law in their territory, but really having some negative atmosphere because of these violations. And Israel, because of this, Israel must be stopped. And because of this, I attribute a special importance to this United Nations General Assembly, which will happen soon in New York. Of course, I really hope that all the Palestinian officials could join to this assembly, but as you remember, already Mr. Trump and Mr. Rubio declared that all these officials are banned because of this visa provisions. It is very unacceptable again. So we need such diplomacy. We need this General Assembly. We need United Nations to push more on Israel.
Thank you so much for joining me and for your insights, Dr. Demirtas. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Now, Turkey's Defence Minister Yashar Gula met with Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in Islamabad on Tuesday. The National Defence Ministry announced Gula and his delegation held discussions with Sharif and other officials. He also conveyed greetings from Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to the Pakistani leader. The Turkish minister also held meetings with Pakistan's Defence Minister and Commerce Minister. Moving to Iran now, the UN nuclear watchdog has agreed to resume inspections of the country's nuclear facilities, a step seen as easing tensions with Europe. Officials caution that any move to reimpose sanctions could jeopardize these measures. Here's more.
Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency have reached an agreement to restart inspections of Tehran's nuclear sites. The deal, signed in Cairo, sets out practical mechanisms that comply with Iranian law passed after US and Israeli attacks in June suspended inspections. Arakchi said the understanding reflects Iran's exceptional security circumstances.
I shall stress that in case of any hostile act against my country, and in the event of reimposition of terminated United Nations Security Council resolutions, Iran will regard these practical steps as terminated.
Arakchi said the understanding reflects Iran's exceptional security circumstances while meeting the technical requirements of the UN nuclear watchdog. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi welcomed the development.
This is a step in the right direction. This is a door we are opening. And of course, there are many things that still need to happen. We have to implement it in good faith. Others around the world can help us. And I am sure that they will do right that.
The agreement comes as France, Britain and Germany have begun a 30-day process to restore sanctions lifted under the 2015 nuclear deal unless Iran fully resumes inspections, accounts for its near weapons-grade uranium and re-engages in talks with the United States. State media said the deal finalizes how Iran will implement its safeguards obligations, marking a rare moment of cooperation after months of tension.
Now, leaders and experts from across Asia met in Baku for the 13th CICA Think Tank Forum to discuss ways of boosting security, energy and regional connectivity. The two-day event opened with a message from Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev, underlining his country's commitment to cooperation, followed by sessions focusing on the Middle Corridor, the Belt and Road Initiative.
We'll present and formally adopt the agenda.
Baku hosts the 13th Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, CICA, Think Tank Forum, with 90 policymakers, experts, researchers and delegates from over 10 countries gathering to discuss researched proposals and recommendations to explore key issues across Asia. The two-day forum, co-organized by Azerbaijan's AIR Center and the Shanghai Institutes for International Studies, focuses on the theme, the resonance of development and security. The event opened with a video presentation and a special message from President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, delivered to participants by the head of the AIR Center, Farid Shafiev, highlighting Azerbaijan's commitment to building trust and advancing cooperation across Asia. Throughout the day, speakers led sessions on security governance, supply chain cooperation in the era of green and digital transition, energy, and major connectivity projects, with particular attention to the Middle Corridor, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the International North-South Transport Corridor. Some speakers even joined online to share their proposals and recommendations.
And I wish for all the participants.
Speakers emphasized Azerbaijan's strategic role in these projects and its potential to drive stronger regional integration throughout the panels.
Indeed, very important event, not only for Azerbaijan, but also for whole countries, participating countries, as this event will deepen the bilateral cooperation in different sectors, especially connectivity, energy, and at this session we discussed very important issues such as the Middle Corridor, which is important for Azerbaijan, also for Central Asian countries, for China to develop this route.
Building on this, Chinese experts highlighted how such initiatives could reshape connectivity across the continent.
So personally, I see here a huge potential in the synergy between the two projects, because the Middle Corridor, which promoted by Azerbaijan and other regional countries, would be maybe by distance the shortest the transportation road between China and Europe. So that means that could play as the bridge to connecting two major markets. And then I think these projects will also generate and stimulate the regional interactions and economic integration.
You said that is ready to activate.
The day wrapped up with an open discussion where participants engaged directly with panel speakers and exchanged views on how to move proposals forward.
Officials at the Absheron Logistics Centre celebrated the 5th anniversary of the China-Europe Railway Express through the Middle Corridor and welcomed the latest freight train from China's Yiwu. The cargo will be transported from Baku to markets in Turkey and Europe. The volume of goods coming through the Middle Corridor has increased fivefold since 2019. In the last year alone, 358 block trains were sent from China to Europe. Armenia Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan is expected to visit Moscow at the end of September for the World Atomic Week. Armenia media reports he may also hold a separate meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Officials in Yerevan said details of the Prime Minister's trips will be announced at the proper time as the Moscow gathering prepares to bring together leaders from countries advancing their nuclear programs. Shifting to Central Asia, Almaty hosts the Space Days Kazakhstan 2025 Forum. The forum brings together leading experts, global space agencies and companies to discuss new technologies in space exploration. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimazana reports.
According to international analysts, over the next decade, the annual demand for satellite launches may exceed 3,700. However, the existing number of launch vehicles is still insufficient to meet this demand. This and other issues, along with possible solutions, we discussed at the Space Days Kazakhstan Forum here in Almaty. Kazakh experts emphasize that the main task for the country in space exploration and technology development is to attract foreign investment into an industry that still largely depends on Russia's space industry. A central part of this effort is the revival of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, much of which is still leased to Russia. A key project is the modernization of launch pad number 5 under the Baytarek program, and Kazakhstan plans to invest about $1.3 billion in its upgrade. According to the government's vision, these investments should help diversify the sector, which remains heavily dependent on Russia's space program and has faced difficulties in recent years due to the geopolitical situation.
A new launch vehicle will appear at the end of this year. This is the Soyuz 5 rocket, which will be launched from the Baytarek ground complex. We see this project as giving Baikonur a second wind. Of course, it is too early to talk about a sharp increase in the number of launches, but we can confidently say that Baikonur will remain an active cosmodrome. The Baytarek complex is a modernized Zenit launch pad adapted for Soyuz 5. Its key feature compared to existing launch sites is a fully automated launch. Another factor that makes this project promising is the use of a new, advanced and powerful launch vehicle for which there is strong and stable global demand.
The forum also highlighted the growing influence of Chinese and Indian space projects that are actively promoting their capabilities. Last year, China pledged more than $13 million for joint Kazakh-Chinese initiatives in space exploration. Against the backdrop of sanctions pressure on Russia, Chinese companies working in commercial space launches are expected to become the first foreign operators to use Baikonur facilities under Kazakh jurisdiction. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
The UN has launched a 4-month emergency response plan worth $140 million to assist nearly 500,000 people affected by last week's devastating earthquake in eastern Afghanistan. The appeal comes as winter approaches and families remain in urgent need of food, shelter and medical care. Our correspondent Tamim Behes has more from Kabul.
The earthquake struck Kunar, Laghman and Nangarhar provinces with a magnitude above 6. Followed by 3 strong aftershocks. More than 2,200 people lost their lives and around 3,600 were injured. Over 6,700 homes were either destroyed or damaged, leaving thousands of families displaced in unsafe and makeshift shelters. Many households also lost their food supplies and now face limited access to clean water, health services and sanitation. Schools, clinics and essential infrastructure were also badly affected. The United Nations Emergency Plan aims to reach 457,000 people by the end of the year. Relief operations have already begun, with humanitarian organizations and local authorities delivering food, tents, blankets, warm clothing and clean water. Mobile health and nutrition teams are being deployed along with medical supplies to the worst hit areas. Humanitarian partners are focusing on the needs of vulnerable groups, including women and children, while also preparing communities in high altitude areas for the winter season. The plan includes shelter support, water and sanitation, food assistance, protection services, education, and agriculture and livestock aid to help safeguard lives and livelihoods. The United Nations is calling for urgent international support to ensure families impacted by the earthquake receives life-saving assistance before winter sets in. Tamim Bahis reporting for A News from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Now let's take a closer look at the Zangezur corridor. With the practical implementation of the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, now the subject of intense analytical scrutiny, and with Armenia Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan recently signalling consultations involving Azerbaijani and Turkish officials, the latest visit by the US trade mission to the South Caucasus has intensified hopes that what is often described as the untapped potential of the Middle Corridor might finally be meaningfully realised. Joining me now to discuss this fascinating and involving subject, regarded by many analysts as the most central of central themes in the broader case of the connectivity across Central Asia, is senior editor of Issue Inside, John Kuvelik. Hello, good evening.
Thank you.
My first question is, the US has a significant stake in the Middle Corridor. Given that this trade mission is taking place in the aftermath of the 8th of August agreements signed in Washington, how likely is it to produce tangible results in the new term? Or in the near future, sorry.
Well, I'm not the only analyst that criticizes the Trump-Vance administration for focusing on performative rather than substantive. In this particular case, they've merged the two, where they began with something that was very optically pleasing for the president and very performative in terms of the ceremony at the White House. And they've rather quickly, a little over a month, now we have delegations in Azerbaijan, in Armenia. You have representative of Azerbaijan Foreign Ministry in Washington. You have U.S. representative of NATO meeting with an Azerbaijani representative to NATO. And so there's a lot of activity. Now, whether this activity can result in what the agreement, the bilateral Azerbaijan-Armenia agreement lays out, we don't know. But the steps that all three countries are taking, the US, Azerbaijan, Armenia, to date do reflect well on that they can make this happen. And I think for the Trump administration, because they've been criticized for focusing on the moment and the media optic, maybe they are willing to drill down and provide the time and the resources necessary to make this agreement work.
In light of the foreign policy, then, priorities of the current administration, do you expect the US to increase investment in the South Caucasus, particularly because of China's growing presence with the recent partnership agreement signed between Beijing and Yerevan?
I think you're going to see a goal. There's going to be a lot of discussion about, yes, there should be more direct foreign investment by United States-based companies in Azerbaijan, in Armenia, and even in Turkey, because that's considered a part of this trilateral grouping. But whether that comes into fruition, it's questionable. And I say that in large measure because the investments initially are about infrastructure, and nothing relating to infrastructure happens quickly. You can put up a building in a month, but to expand railway corridors, to build roads, to provide the electrical, the gas, all of what goes into connecting Azerbaijan through Armenia to Turkey, that's just going to take some time. And so, my fear is that because, again, the Trump Vance administration is focused on those immediate moments, that they may sort of drift away because the President Trump won't be able to immediately say, oh, look at that. So it's going to be up to the U.S. companies to really stay in the game and also put pressure on Azerbaijan, put pressure on Armenia to make the regulatory regimes that are going to be important, and as well as Turkey, so that they can do what they say, or what all three countries say they want to do.
You mentioned infrastructure and connectivity. Is that the main challenge between, building this middle corridor to be very beneficial and economically fruitful?
I think it is, because you mentioned about China, and then you've got Russia, sitting out there not happy with any of this. Iran is not happy with any of this. China makes such a long game that initially, they can look at something and say, well, this is very, very helpful to us, but look at the Belt and Road Initiative, initially dismissed, and we look at it now, yes, it has a lot of problems, but they take such a long view that I think they look at a prosperous Azerbaijan, a prosperous Armenia, a prosperous Turkey, where they can have some connectivity, whether it's through Iran, whether it's through Russia, wherever it's through, that somehow will benefit. So I don't think that they're as much as they're really an objector. But the infrastructure part of this is what that brings everything else together. If you're going to build factories, and you're going to build distribution centers, and you're going to build high-tech centers, and if you're going to build energy infrastructure, again, using the infrastructure word, it takes time, but more importantly, you need the infrastructure to move from point A to point B, or in this case, point A to point B to point C, and then onward. So infrastructure is going to be really, really important here.
Everyone familiar with the intricacies of the connectivity saga in Central Asia knows full well that while the US supports the Middle Corridor, it also wishes to limit the extent to which China benefits from it. In that context, how should countries in the South Caucasus navigate this evolving clash of interests, do you think?
It's going to be a challenge for them, and it's not just the next 3.5 years of the Trump-Vance administration. It's beyond. China, in the real estate game, or the real estate business, they always say it's location, location, location. China has location, China has population, China has GDP, and then China has desires, whether they be military desires in the case of what could be Taiwan and the South China Sea, or economic, commercial, financial, political, societal desires, which mean the Caucasus. And they're not going to give up to anyone. And they also know that Washington's 5,000 miles away from Azerbaijan and Armenia. They're right there. And so they know that for the infrastructure, for the build outs of factories and assemblies, that a lot of that stuff's going to come from China, just because China is the source for it. And then they also know that the production from that infrastructure, and then the plants, etc., that probably some of the exports are going to go to China, because of the fact that China is the second largest by population country in the world, the second largest GDP, and also shipping there is easier than shipping to the US, even though the European Union as well, wants. So they're going to be a player. The question is, are they going to be a good actor, or are they going to be a ruffian? Are they going to be muscular? And are they going to politely threaten Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and that? I think it's going to be more, they're just going to let it naturally unwind, because they're going to look at it. If these countries are more prosperous, if they have better connectivity, that means their populations are going to want more, and we're here to provide it.
And with all of this, obviously with Eurasian connectivity is not solely about east-west axes, but the growing interest in the north-south corridor as well, now fashionably described as co-linked complementary with the east and west route. Just very quickly, what is the strategic US take of it on the broader vision of interconnected routes, do you think?
I'm not so sure that there is a really broad thought out vision, because strategic thinking for the United States has over the past decades continued to shrink in terms of thinking in decades, thinking in years, thinking in months, thinking in days. So whether east west, north south, I don't think that it's really been thought out, because everyone's really watching to see what happens with the Russia-Ukraine war, because that impacts Russia's behavior, north-south. Iran impacts the behavior of Russia and impacts Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, and then China is sort of the big influencer. And we just don't know. So I think it's probably too early to say that the U.S. has a really defined strategy. I think they're going to try to do piece by piece, and every countries have a moment or series of moments. Azerbaijan is having its series of moments, Armenia as well, and the U.S.'s job is to sort of keep it going and make certain that no one's fighting again.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and for your insights, Mr. Kavulik. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.